Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this. This is now episode 10 of Rovers Rambles. We've made it to double digits. As always, I'm joined by Jaimie. Good afternoon. How's your week been?
Yeah, decent, thank you. Good afternoon.
That's good. Slightly ruined last weekend, but we'll get on to that. Of course, this week we're going to talk about that 3-2 opening day defeat. It's happened again against York. We've just literally, about 20 minutes before we've come on to record this, had the news that Taylor Moore has left the club by mutual consent. So we'll talk about that. That's big news coming out of the club. Literally perfect timing for us. And then, of course, we'll preview our first home game of the season in the league, taking place on Saturday, of course, against Newport County, which is another huge game. But I think we'll get straight on to our York review. It's happened again, an opening day defeat, 3-2. And to be honest, I think you watched the game on TV. I was there. And I think we both agree that 3-2 kind of masks how poor the performance was.
The result flattered us. I mean, that's
Yeah.
100% fair to say. I do, first of all, want to give them a lot of credit because I think we were very critical, understandably so, of their whole situation going into the game. But all credit to them. They didn't play like that at all. They didn't play like they were a team that's been going through the kind of turmoils that they've had in recent weeks. They really turned up and put on a good performance. But on our end, it was incredibly disappointing, kind of all round, really, bar a few minor exceptions.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. Your point about York, I agree. You've got to give them credit. We were talking all about the factors that could play into, them being terrible and us, getting that advantage and taking it. They didn't look like a team that had, lost their manager 2 weeks ago. The fans were already, booing and turning against Scott Lindsay. They looked fantastic when they had the chances, they had the ball. I think the biggest concern was, despite the fact, and we both agree that York played very well, and we're giving them the full credit for it, we made them look decent in spells. I mean, obviously, there was plenty of work that York did that was good on their part, but we also made it far too easy for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, their work on the ball was very, very good. They were very slick, very smooth with everything they did. But when you say like we were making them look good, we gave them the opportunity to show that off constantly because it seemed like every time we got the ball, it was a rush to see who could get rid of it the quickest.
Yeah.
Particularly in that first half an hour or so, there was nothing was sticking. Everything was so almost panicked, kind of rushed. It was, yeah, just like you could. We were a team that were playing like we were the ones under massive pressure when really that should have been them,
Yeah.
and it just kind of all came together, and we managed to piece it together for a little spell, and then once again it just fell apart when they grew back into the game.
Yeah, it seemed like we were the team that were playing under the pressure when you could maybe argue that was York, obviously with the circumstances surrounding the game. And I agree, we had probably one good spell throughout the entire game. And obviously we scored in that spell, but it just wasn't good enough all round. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was just how passive we were. And I think I was saying this in my TikTok review a couple of days ago. I think the best way to sum that up is the possession stats. I mean, they had on the big screen, they had the Sky's feed, obviously, because it was on Sky Football. And I turn around, I think it was about 15 minutes in, and I see we've conceded a corner, and I see the stats, and I'm just shocked because I see possession, and I look down 13% after what, 15, 20 minutes against, for a team like us. I was just completely shocked. And that is just shows how passive we were. We were letting York, just completely run through us. And we were trying to sort of play haramball in a way when really it doesn't work. Especially when they're playing as well as they were, it gets to a point, doesn't it? And I think we did well in the first half to deal with it, but then second half, it just all fell apart.
I think the biggest issue I've picked up from our first two games, something that was definitely a case against Peterborough and was a case again here, is the long ball can work, but we really need to get better at discerning when it's the right time to do it. Because obviously the
Yeah.
goal, and then there was a chance, I think two chances actually, right at the start of the second half, that all came from long balls down the channel. it's an option, but I think we're almost taking it as like a solution to every single problem that we have, which we cannot do because we were just so like unbelievably wasteful, particularly in that first half hour, and we're incredibly lucky to not be punished for it then. But then when kind of the last half hour came about and we fell into a similar spell, we were punished for it multiple times. And yeah, I think the most important thing from this game in a lot of different areas, which we will get onto, is we've early on had kind of the foundations laid out for what we need to change. We're not going to be coming out of this going like, oh, we've lost. How did that happen? We know exactly what we need to do now.
Yeah, I think that's the only positive in defeat sort of thing, is that we know where we need to change. It's not like it's, like you said, come as a surprise. There is definitely some concerning aspects, but it's good that we know we can identify them and we can work on them. And I think that's probably the only positive in defeat, if we can even say there is one.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there's a couple key areas. Obviously, on the ball, we've spoken about this, but off the ball, there were a few areas in particular, probably 3 or 4 players that didn't show up, and you can highlight exactly why those were. I don't know if you want to get onto that now, if you want to leave that for a bit.
I mean, we
Somebody in
can
the
do.
midfield.
There's a few that I'm thinking of.
Well, if we go on to their first goal, I think the one
Yeah.
that highlights for me is Richie Smallwood. I don't know if that's something you'd agree with.
Yeah, you're breaking up slightly. You're saying Smallwood.
Yeah, Richie Smallwood for their first goal. You with me?
I didn't hear that at all. You're breaking up quite a lot, to be honest. Good start.
I'll just carry on. I'll just carry on. Right. So their first goal, York, all came from
Right.
Richie Smallwood, who
We'll
was
let him
somebody
take the floor because I can't.
very, very complimentary of last season. Somebody we were very excited to get back, and I think what we've learned is he's somebody who has to be kind of the controller in the middle, because in this we played a midfield 3 and he sat slightly wider where he needed to cover more ground, and you can tell his legs were struggling to keep up with that. And for their first goal, he got bypassed with so much ease. I can't remember who it was. It was one of their midfielders was able to walk past him without doing really anything of any skill or quality, and it allowed them to just completely open the pitch up. And that wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the one time that we were punished for it. And I think we've learned straight away, like we were saying, we've learned the areas we need to change. If Smallwood's going to play, he has to play the role that Keane and Goff played in this game. They have to be fighting for that position. They can't play together because Goff is only going to play in that middle role, and Smallwood can't play anywhere else.
I've got you back, and amen to that. I think, yeah, definitely us playing him in that wide area, he looked to just off it. He was getting ran round a lot, like you said, and it took us a while, but eventually we were punished for it. And I think it was one of those games. I mean, he was immense last season, so everyone's due an off game, but it doesn't help when he's not played in his natural position. And I think it is true what you said, that him and Keenan should probably be fighting for that role that Keenan played on Saturday. So I think that's something we can look at. It's a shame because obviously he was so good last season, so it's not ideal to see him have an off day, but I think it would have helped us if he was playing in his natural position.
Yeah, it's a difficult one for him because particularly when you're playing without wingers as well, when their fullbacks are advancing on as much as they are, you're kind of relying on those wider midfielders to be covering that role as well. They're almost responsible for 2 players constantly. So when you have a player who is of Smallwood's age, who is going to be struggling if you're over demanding of him, that is what can happen. And it would have been the kind of thing you would have liked to figure out before the game. But like I said, we know it now. We don't make the same mistake again.
And I think that was a reason why Smallwood struggled so much in that wider area, was because that their fullbacks, you were talking about how they like to press on. They were very good at it. I think that was one of York's best qualities on Saturday, was how good their fullbacks were at helping their transition and getting their attacks going. Like some of the pace, I think, especially was it the 23? He was
Yes.
absolutely rapid, and we really struggled to deal with that. And I think that's what you were saying with highlighting Smallwood playing out in that wide area. He's not got the legs for it, especially when he's coming up against a fullback who is just absolutely rapid. And I think that was one of York's best qualities, was how good their fullbacks were, not only at getting them from the transition from defence to attack, but also assisting in those attacks. They were fantastic. I think they were one of York's best aspects.
Yeah, no, 100%. They're 23 in particular. I 100% agree. While I was watching the game, I was speaking to other people who were watching the game, and he was the player we all highlighted at the same time. Was their number 23? It was fantastic, start to finish.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a difficult one. I do think, kind of overall, looking at the performance, a lot of our issues were off the ball. When it came to like chance creation, I thought once we finally managed to make it stick after that half-hour mark, we did actually start to piece things together quite well going forward. It was just we looked way too vulnerable time and time again. All of the goals were preventable by individuals. I think especially that third one is
Oh God, don't
extremely
get me
preventable,
started.
and as about as frustrating as you can get when you've just equalised and then
Yeah.
immediately you're that sloppy. It's just, yeah, it's an annoying one. It's a really annoying one to take all round.
Oh yeah, 100%. The third goal was the most annoying one for me. Not only, like you said, was it incredibly preventable. I mean, how many times as well throughout that game did we leave sort of men unmarked in the box, back post, and it's a wonder it took us until what, the 80th minute for us to be properly punished for. I mean, the second goal you could even argue, but I mean, the third goal was just unforgivable defending, and like you said, the fact that it came pretty much what, 5 minutes after we'd equalised, it was just so annoying. Yeah, what else can I say?
Yeah, well, it was, well, Harbottle who I am going to highlight for that, because I do think for the second and third goals he needs to be doing better. It was the second where he gave the ball away, and then the third it was his man that he lost at the back post. But I do think the bigger issue throughout was the fullbacks. I
Yeah,
think this was kind of the one time in the game where Spark got caught being slow getting out to his man to stop a cross. Because the cross came in for the right hand side, so it was him who you'd expect to get out. I think it was the only time I'd say he did that in particular. I actually think it was Southam Hales who was more guilty for that, but he didn't ever really get punished for it. Who was just really slow and really kind of lackadaisical getting out to their man, and we conceded so many chances from unpressured balls coming into the box. And while
probably
we
should have
can sit here
conceded a
and
penalty
criticise
from it
the
as
men in our
well.
middle for not doing enough, yeah, and while we can sit here and like get annoyed at the men in the middle for not doing enough, at the end of the day, you want to prevent these problems at the root of them, and
Yeah,
that would have been the fullbacks who weren't doing enough.
yeah, definitely agree. I think they both looked a bit slow, a bit off it. Um, Southern Hills, like you said, the amount of times he failed to track his man and left the amount of space they had out wide as well. Obviously, their fullbacks and their wide players were doing very well to exploit that space. But when you give them the space that we gave them, it is easy enough, and that's definitely something that we want to see improve because yeah, the fullbacks, the amount of space they left, and then just the quality of some of the defending they were doing was just not good enough, really. Um, and yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, especially in Southam Hale's case, the fact he was playing on the same side as Smallwood. When you can see the person playing next to you isn't going to be able to cover the ground as
Yeah.
much, you have to put that extra 10% in. And it felt like he knocked 10% off from kind of what we're used to from him. You have to be more up for it than that, because you could just see time and time again it was the same thing constantly, and we were lucky to not be punished for it more than we were.
Yeah, especially when you've got a player like Smallwood who is struggling with it. He's getting, for want of a better word, rinsed down that flank. Then you've got to have that fullback to come and cover, you know, close the space down and just try and, like you said, stop the problem at the root. And we didn't do that enough. And it is, to be honest, it is a wonder that it took York as long as they did to actually score. And it's a wonder that we went in at halftime 1-0 up, because while the problems got worse in the second half, they were there in the first half. It's just York couldn't find a way to exploit them. When they finally did, to be fair, I think it was a case of we were starting to tire a little bit as well, which never helps. But once they can finally exploit the root cause, that's it, it's over. And especially if they know how to do it once, they can then do it multiple times. And that's what we saw.
Yeah, and to be honest, I actually don't know if there was much between the performances in the first and second half. I think they were just so much more ruthless. in that second half. They really made us. I think we'd be coming in with a completely different look on the game if they had just done more when they got into those areas, because their work in like the middle of the pitch in the first half was really, really effective. It was just when they got in and around the box, they were a little bit sloppy at times, could have done more to really punish us, which they completely fixed up going in after half time. And to be fair, after half time, we did start well for that first 5 or 10 minutes. But then once they got the first, it was one-way traffic from there, really, despite the fact we managed to get the equaliser through what is, I mean, if we're going to criticise referees after Peterborough, I think we have to do it the other way. What is a ridiculously soft penalty?
Oh, we got
Never
so
a
lucky.
penalty in a million years. And as you mentioned earlier, they also should have had one up the other end.
Yep.
But yeah, it was kind of just one-way traffic. They were so much more effective in that second half and really punished us for how sloppy we were. And yeah, we have to fix that up going forward.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that is true. I think first half was pretty good from us in the sense, I'm not saying defensively or really in the middle, but I think going forward, I was pretty pleased. And the fact that we managed to sort of take advantage of York's sloppiness in a way in the first half to go in 1-0 up, I think that was pretty good. And then second half, like you said, they fixed up going forward. And we were lucky we even managed to finish 3-2. Like you said, the penalty, very, very harsh. We got lucky with that one. And we got lucky, like I was saying earlier, for the penalty in the first half. Southern Hell's completely tripped the man, and how he's not given the penalty is completely beyond me. So really, it could have easily been 4-1 on another day if the referee had sharpened up a little bit. So there's aspects, isn't there? You can look at some bits of the performance and think, yeah, that was decent. I think going forward, we look pretty good. And I think that's the one key area that I think if we don't change anything, that is it. You know, just keep going as we are up front, because we've created chances, we created goals. We know we can do that. It's just we need to sharpen up everywhere else, really. And we can't let a team, you know, I say back into the game, obviously they were in the game anyway, but sort of we capitulated defensively in the second half. Whether you can say that is York, you know, starting to take their chances more, which I do think it is somewhat that. But it also was, I think, a little bit of defensive capitulation, because despite the fact that we were so under the cosh in the first half, I thought there were some decent moments of defensive work in the first half, and that all just went out the window in the second half. So I think that's the thing we need to work on. We need to try not to get overrun in the midfield, because I think that was another thing we talked about last week with Peterborough, and then going into the York preview, was we were overran so much in midfield against Peterborough, and it kind of happened again on Saturday. And I think that's a big reason why they were able to have so much possession and transfer so quickly into those attacking phases. So I think those are the two things we need to sharpen up on: the defensive work and the midfield battle. And if we can do that, then hopefully we can take the positives that we gained. Not many of them, but we can take those positives into Saturday and work on that as a basis.
Yeah, and like you said, the midfield battle was a big issue, but also weirdly, our biggest highlight came from that battle. One man in particular, who, to be fair, like I said, I was a little bit harsh of after Peterborough, but was absolutely the standout from our performance on Saturday, was Keenan Goff.
Oh
He
yeah,
was pretty fantastic from start to finish, really. He was kind of, bar maybe Cavani, he was kind of a league ahead of everyone else on the pitch for us. That
100%.
first goal kind of sums up his game perfectly. He's in a battle with someone that he comes out the better of multiple times, finds a perfect ball over the top into Cavani, which he did multiple times. I think I mentioned we had, I think, 2 chances that came from a similar ball down the channel in the second half. I think it was him who played both of those passes, if I remember correctly.
I think you're
So
right. Yeah,
his
I can't
passing
remember
range looks
100%.
really, really good. His passing range looks really, really good. He's clearly up for a battle. He's covers ground very well. He's got a lot of legs on him. I find it hard to find anything to kind of pick apart from his game. It's just finding the men to sit around him. Because if we can get more players like him in there, I don't see a team ever being able to beat us in that midfield battle. But the issue was he was 1 of 4, not 1 of 1.
Yeah. No, to be honest, I don't think I've got much to add, because I think you've pretty much summed it up perfectly. He was getting stuck in, and when he had the ball, he was, you know, comfortable, and he was able to dictate the play. find a good pass, like you said, obviously the ball over the top for Cavan to chase, and then he finds Mola for the goal. That was a fantastic ball. We had a few similar that led to chances. Obviously, we couldn't take any of them, but I thought he was fantastic. He was my man of the match. I'm not going to say by far because I thought Cavan was on a similar level, but he was fantastic. And like you said, if we can find good personnel to sit around him in the midfield, I think he could be a very good player for us.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think my only real concern looking at the squad is that right centre mid. If we are going to stick with this same shape, which I'm not against, it's just finding that player to sit on the right side of that diamond in midfield. Because we've learned now it can't be Smallwood, and Tommy Lee is kind of the next name you default there, dropping him back. But then again, how much do we think his defensive work is going to come into play if we find ourselves in a similar game? You don't really know. Russell Denny seems to be more confident coming off that other side. So unless somebody else comes in, I think that's the one area we are going to really have to look at if we're going to stick with this shape, in finding someone to fill that role. And if not, we are probably going to have to make adjustments all round to suit that, because that is an issue. As much as it is one position on the pitch, it is a massive issue, and we were picked apart for it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think the formation is sort of maturing a little bit, but I think that is a bit of an area that we need to pick out. Like you said, Smallwood, when he played there on Saturday, was just not up to scratch. The legs weren't there. Tommy Lee could probably fill that role, but again, it's the defensive work if we need it. I mean, he can probably. I reckon he'd be eager to try and get back and help. It's just whether he's got the quality, because we know he is more of an attacking, player in that sort of sense. So it would be interesting to see how we go about that. Could it potentially be another signing? I think Steve thinks we're not that far off maturity in the squad in terms of mature in sort of the final sense of what the squad will be. That's what I mean, not in terms of all the players are like 50, but do you think there could be any signings to fill that void, or do you think it's going to come from existing squad players?
Well, it looked as though, from what he was saying, he looked as though he was kind of confident there'd be at least one more. I know he mentioned the idea of a striker if the right option came about, which I struggle to see at this point. But he alluded to there being one more that was being worked on, which position-wise he didn't specify, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is someone to kind of fill that role,
Yeah.
especially after the York game now. I feel like that is the kind of thing he'd be eager to at least kind of put the feelers out on and have a look into. I think we should kind of prepare with the idea that we're not going to get anyone else in. I think we should be looking at what we have just in case. So if the opportunity comes up, I do think it's the kind of thing that we should pounce on.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think that is a good thing about Steve is he's very sort of, I mean, when he's got the opportunity to fix things, he's very proactive about fixing them. So I definitely, that is a world that I can see is where he's identified this as right. This is something that we need to fix up. If we can find someone, then good. If not, he's got the knowledge to know how to deal with this. So hopefully it's an issue that we can fix. And I don't see why not, because I think from what we're saying here, I mean, there were other aspects, obviously. I'm not saying that we get a good player to fill in that right centre mid role and everything suddenly becomes sunshine and rainbows, but it's probably our biggest gaping hole at the moment. And I think if we can fill it, then that gives us a lot better chance to then go away and fix the other issues that, while they still were important and they cost us on Saturday, they're not as major, and they can probably be filled by the players that we already have.
Yeah, and I think it's a case as well is because that issue resulted in so many chances coming back at us and so much kind of pressure coming back at us. I think a lot of the other issues almost solve themselves. Like we
Yeah,
mentioned, kind of the root of the problem. I think this is a case of if you fix that, it eases so much of the pressure that a lot of the other problems will either fix themselves or kind of just fade into the background because you won't notice them anywhere near as much.
yeah, I think that's true. Like you said, if you fix the root cause of the problem, it's sort of like best analogy I can think of is a bit like vines and poison ivy. That if there's a massive problem, I don't think this is an absolutely huge problem, but let's say it's like it is for the analogy, then that will get its roots into other things, and then that makes them become problems, and then you've got to deal with that. But if you can sort of get rid of the root cause of it, sort of, if we're using this ivy analogy, if you get rid of the ivy, then the rest of the roots will then take care of themselves. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get I get what you're going for. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's something we can look into. So overall, then it's an annoying result, obviously, and there were definitely concerning aspects, weren't there? But I don't think we can look at this and be too concerned. We can be concerned. There's some aspects that I definitely look at and think, oh, that wasn't amazing. But at the end of the day, we did still score 2 goals, and obviously, I think we were lucky to keep up with York, but still 2 goals, one of them a dodgy penalty, no doubt, and we'll hold our hands up and say that it was a dodgy penalty, but you still take it, when you're a fan of that club, don't you? I'm not gonna go on the pitch and say to the ref, "Oh, sorry, mate, that wasn't a penalty. Just, give your goal kick, will you?" Um, and it's the opening day. We never, ever, 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 with the exception of a couple of years ago, win on the opening day. That's what, one win in 16. So this just sort of happens for
Yeah.
us. We should be used to it by now. Somehow we're not. But yeah, I think that's just what you've got to put it down to. Hopefully for now is that it's just opening day rubbishness again, really.
Yeah. I mean, I said this to someone the other day. I said, if you're gonna act like this game didn't happen just because it's the opening day and that like none of it matters and we can just move on as if the game didn't happen at all, that's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
if you're gonna look at one game to start the season and write our entire season off because of it, that's equally ridiculous. That's actually significantly more ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've highlighted the areas we need to improve, and the important thing now is making sure we do it. The problems will come if we don't, but we have to trust that we will because we've not been given a reason yet to not trust that we will.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I was saying obviously the opening. I think that does play a role in it. I'm not saying me saying that was not me saying that all the problems from that game were completely because it's opening day. I do think it plays a role, and I think you're right in terms of that it's a middle ground that people that are saying, well, it's just the opening day of the season, it's what we do. They are massively oversimplifying the game and the problems that we face throughout the game. But at the end, there's a smaller minority, I will say, but there are a minority of people who are already ringing alarm bells after one game, and that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say the name, but I think there's one particular account on Twitter who's we kind of default to. I think it was you who actually sent me the post about it,
Yeah.
saying that we're fighting for mid-table. Yeah, we have some interesting characters in this fan base,
Oh, don't we
and
just? Yeah.
yeah, they're going to be out in full force, which kind of hopefully should give us that little bit of a kick to shut them up as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, I do find it quite funny how some people just can't really, look at things in a sort of face value way as to what they are and massively overreact one way or another. But that's just football fans, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, especially on this half of Bristol, it is football fans.
Oh God. Oh yeah, it really is football fans. Yeah. No, definitely. Anyway, that'll be it then for our York review. Obviously, not the greatest of games, but it's done now. We'll have to move on. Before we get on to our Newport preview, of course, our first home game of the season in the league, derby. I don't like people calling it a derby, but most people do. We're going to talk about that news that I was on about that we got about 20 minutes before we came on to record here. And if you've been on Twitter over the last couple of hours or so, obviously that'll be when we put this out, you'll know that the club have confirmed that Taylor Moore has left Bristol Rovers by mutual consent. And look, without wanting to sound like a bit of a dickhead to him, thank goodness.
I don't know what you're on about. I've spent the last kind of half an hour just in floods of tears. This is honestly, I'm getting the same feeling as when JCH left the club. This has been horrible to deal with. Right. No one's upset. Like
No.
he's looks like a lovely bloke. He seems like a lovely bloke. He's done great things for the community, but my God, he is a terrible footballer. And I don't think anyone's upset to see the back of him, even slightly.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I mean, I've seen the community work he's done with sort of the walks and stuff. I went to one of them, and he does seem like a lovely bloke, to be fair. And like you said, the community work, we can't knock him for that. But I think it sums it up, right? When we're trying to talk about a player who has left the club, right? We're talking about him as a footballer, on a football-based podcast, and the best thing we can say about him is that he does good work for the Rovers Community Trust. And I think that just really sums up what Taylor Moore was as a player for Bristol
Yeah.
Rovers, that his best contribution for the club was for the community trust. We
I
basically
mean,
reducing him to the same level as, with no disrespect to him, because I absolutely love the bloke. Shout out the CT College. We're reducing him to the same level as Jack Monday, basically. And Jack Monday is an incredible bloke, but he is not a professional footballer. This is what I mean. This is why I think everyone is just happy to see the back of Taylor Moore. Again, I feel like I'm ripping into him, and I don't want to, because he is a person at the end of the day. So it's going to sound like I'm on some sort of keyboard warrior Twitter argument here, but
he's not listening to this. Go ahead, it's fine.
that is a very good point. Like I said, when your achievements at Bristol Ravens can be compared to Jack Monday's achievements, again, with no disrespect to Jack Monday, he is not a professional footballer. He is one of the tutors at the Rovers Community College, and we're pretty much giving him the same Rovers legacy as Taylor Moore. So I think that says it all.
Yeah, it does. And then kind of even the one thing he did have, he did kind of have us on his side for, which was his personality. He then went and made some comments surrounding Andy Wyman to just try
Comments,
and
yeah.
bury that into the floor a little bit as well.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was really,
he's
that was the final
gonna
moment
tear
from
your
it.
team apart this season, isn't he, Taylor? He's gonna tear your Rovers lot apart. Oh yeah, he is actually. I think
Yeah.
just one of a kind footballer for this club, honestly.
Yeah, no, that was, I think any goodwill that he had was nailed into the floor after that comment. That was, I mean, I understand it from his own personal point of view, because, he was there. I think he was there when Vyman was there, wasn't he? So he knows him. He's a good
Yeah,
friend of his. And he knows, obviously, I hate saying it because she did, but the quality that Vyman has. But when you're contracted to a club, and you're going to play that player, don't then say that he's going to tear your club apart. It makes no sense. I mean, surely he knew that he was leaving, because why on earth would you say that otherwise? It's just suicide in a way, career suicide, because there's no way then that the fans are going to be on side with you when they have literally just been told, yes, I believe that I will get, because he's a centre back as well, isn't he? So if he's playing against Vyman, he's the one who is going to be directly, um, I've lost my train of thought here. I was about to say
responsible.
benefiting from it, but that's not right, because, well, maybe he will be. Maybe he wants to be benefiting from it, but he's the one who's going to be torn to shreds by Vyman if he's playing. And he's basically admitting, yeah, if he plays us, we probably will be torn to shreds. I'll probably be torn to shreds. And why you would say that as a professional footballer is completely beyond me. The only thing I can think of is he thought that he was going anyway. And that's why he said it. Because why on earth would you say that otherwise?
Yeah, no, honestly, you can't make sense of it. And I think again, like we were saying, how it sums up his career here, where the first thing that you're going to give him credit for is his work with the CT. It also sums up his career here, that I think for the first time I can remember, we've announced a player leaving and we've had to restrict the comments on the tweet. We've had
Yeah,
to lock off the comments
I
because they
saw
knew
that.
what the reaction was going to be. I don't think they even did that for Soteria.
No, I don't think they did. Yeah.
That kind of perfectly sums up what we're talking about here, because it's just when there literally is not a positive you can mention of this guy on the pitch.
No.
But one pre-assist, one half volley cross into Bryant Belongo, and that was when we were in League One. That sums up what we're working with here. We're going back almost 2 years to go back to his last good moment on the pitch in the blue and white quarters.
Nah, I honestly
And
don't know
that's
what you're on
embarrassing.
about. That cross, pays his money alone. Don't know why we've ever let him go, because just the memories from that, they flood back so often, and I just think, why on earth did we let a player with such quality in a cross go? I mean, we're gonna go down. What are we doing?
Nah, I don't even want to kind of justify that with a jokey response, to be honest. Even though I was the one that started this, I can't even bring myself to kind of agree with that anymore.
Right. Well, I think it sums up Taylor Moore's career at Bristol Rovers that this section is slowly devolving into just waffle, because we're we're trying to find things to say. Really, I think this is what you can gather for anyone who's made the incredible decision to watch or listen to this thing, is that we don't have a clue what to talk about right now, because there just really isn't anything to talk about other than, wow, he was a bit bad.
Yeah, well, let's say let's look at a little bit down the line. Taylor Moore's just signed for a new club, and a fan of that new club has looked up his name, and they've landed on this podcast from the title to find out what he is. So whoever that person is, if you're listening now, good luck.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. First of all, thank you for listening. I don't know what you're doing with your day, but I'm glad you've decided to spend it with us. But secondly, good luck, because you're gonna need it. You are gonna need it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think what we've gathered is Jack Monday is the go. Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Right then, let's move on then to Saturday, and of course our first home league game of the season against Newport County. Again, I'm going to use the air quotes because I hate people saying this. I don't think it is, but the seven-side derby, local rivals. To be fair, we are local rivals. I think there's a difference though between what Newport is in a derby, and coming into this game, a couple of weeks ago, I thought, right, if we can get York out of the way, then we've got Newport. Oh, tasty. But then Newport, wow, on Saturday, 3-0 against Rochdale. Currently, if the league stopped tomorrow, if there was an asteroid impact that wiped out the Earth, Newport would go down as 2026-27 League Two champions. So maybe it won't be as easy a test as we thought it would be.
No, I mean, I haven't watched the game and I haven't really kept up with it, but kind of the general consensus of what I'm getting is they were leagues better than anything they showed last season. They were like significantly improved in just about every area. They were much more effective. They abandoned kind of the thoughts I heard from one person in particular was they kind of recognized the fact that they haven't got the quality to be this really good football inside and for once actually play to their strengths and just went for being quicker, sharper, more effective, and it worked out. As you can see, they were, from what I've seen, pretty fantastic all round. And yeah, it's gonna, from the looks of it, be a good test that, like you said, we weren't really expecting.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably, if it's true what you were saying, that they've sort of switched to going more pragmatic and playing to their strengths, then I think that definitely will be a good thing for them, because under Christian Fuchs, he was better than what they had before, but I think you're right in the sense that they tried too much to stick to one system, that they just weren't good enough to play. And I think it very nearly shot them, well, more than in the foot. It kind of shot them in the foot in the sense that they only finished 20th, I think it was, in the end. But it very nearly could have shot them in the head. And they were one or two bad results away from being in the National League. That's how bad their season got. But I mean, it can't start any better, really, than what they did. I mean, I think from what I've heard from Rochdale fans, they played pretty poorly. So I think that does help, obviously, to a certain extent. But still, I mean, we're going to have to be up for it, I think, because it's not going to be an easy one, I don't think, anymore. I thought it might have been an easy one a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think it will be anymore.
No, 100% not. I mean, I'm just having a look at it now. 33% possession, but all of the attacking play came from them. Rochdale didn't have a shot on target. York dominated just about every attacking area you can get, about every attacking stat you could get. The whole game flowed their way, even though they had less of the ball, which is going to provide a different test for us because obviously that is kind of the polar opposite of what we faced against York. Um, but it will be an interesting one. They're going to be right the way up for it. They've got a sold out away end. They're going to be making noise. If Bobby Campbell gets on the pitch, they're probably going to double that noise because
Yeah.
they absolutely despise him for being a snake for some reason. Um, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. That like we said before, I really wasn't expecting this. This kind of felt like you don't want to look at any game like this, but it felt like a little bit of a write off in
Yeah.
our favour. And in 1 week, that entire narrative is kind of completely flipped on its head.
Pop, do you think that could be a good thing in a way? Because it might make sure that the players are sharp and up for the game. Whereas obviously if it was a write-off, like you were saying, that could potentially sort of cause a little bit of complacency, and then you never know what happens. I mean, I'm trying to think of, small positives about it being a tougher game. There's not really many positives to, oh, you've got to work harder for 3 points. But could that be one that potentially the players will have to look at it in sort of, I think they would have given Newport the respect that they deserve anyway, despite the fact that they would have been, if they were, on the same level as last season, they would have been much worse than us. I feel like they still would have given them the respect, but now they have to, if you know what I mean. They can't get away with what they did on Saturday, or we're going to get punished again. So, do you think that could be a positive in a way that we're being forced to respect Newport? I think we would have anyway, but we have to now.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a good point to bring up. Is kind of even really disregarding their performance, just off the back of what we've shown, there has to be a reaction now, and I do think that reaction will be amplified now, bringing their performance into play. The fact that they've shown that if a team's not on it against them, they can punish them. They're not the kind of side that are going to let you off. They're going to provide a challenge. They're going to be pretty ruthless from what we've seen. So we are going to have to be on it in every area. We are going to have to make these improvements straight away. This isn't going to be like a bedding in period. Oh, let's test a few things. No, we've got to be the finished article, and we've got to be the finished article immediately. And that is going to provide kind of an interesting dynamic for the game because we don't know how much of their performance came down to how Rochdale played. We don't know how much of their performance kind of we don't know what Rochdale kind of afforded them. We don't know if they're going to play the same way. We don't know if they're going to have the ball. We don't really know if we're going to have. You'd expect it to be us, but you don't know. We've also been a team that have liked to be a bit more kind of direct and to the point. We're not really a team that likes to sit and control games all the time. So we don't know what that's going to play out. I think all in all, it's a difficult one to predict because there are so many different ways that this game could go.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you made. Is it'll be interesting to see how much of Newport's performance was them and how much of it was Rochdale being poor. Because I have heard one of our good mates, he's got a friend who supports Rochdale, so I hear quite a lot about Rochdale because of him. And from what I've heard from him, they were terrible. They were like absolutely like he's not seen a worse performance for a good while from them. Um, they showed absolutely nothing on Saturday, so it'd be interesting to see how much of Newport's performance was them actually playing well. I mean, they played well. They won 3-0 for God's sake. So obviously they played well, but it would be interesting to see how much of that was from them, but how much of that was Rochdale being, cataclysmically poor, because that could play a factor in it. Let's say like sort of 20% of that was Rochdale being poor. That's still sort of 20% performance that Newport need to find from somewhere, because what with us losing our first game and not in a great way, we'll be up for it. We want to make an impression. With it being a local game, we'll be up for it. So I would hope, this is obviously best case scenario, but I would hope that we don't give Newport an inch. So even if it's 20% of the performance that was from Rochdale being poor, that's 20% that Newport need to make up from somewhere. So I think that's the biggest unknown going into the game, is how much of the performance was Rochdale gifting it to Newport and not Newport getting it themselves, if you know what I mean. And I think for Newport, I don't know if there's any Newport fans that are watching this, they could, leave a comment and let us know. They want to hope that that number is as close to 0% as possible, because then I think that gives them the best chance of, having a proper go at this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had to have been good to get the result they got, but you can't really get like a concrete idea of how much of that comes down to the liberties that they were afforded. If you're up against a poor side, they're giving you an opportunity to settle into the game. And even if they are going to kind of put the same level of performance on, if we're giving them more to think about, things can just kind of fall apart, no matter how kind of good or bad you are in these little moments. If you're being given less of these moments, performances can completely flip on their head. And I've said this a few times now, it's providing a really interesting game, because you don't really know, because we've got so little to go off. Obviously, it's only the second game of the season. We don't really know how either side is going to react to how many of these different possibilities could come from the game. And the entire game will completely depend on these little moments and which way they fall.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point you made about how sort of it gets easier to play when you're playing against a team that is poor, and then it can sort of, I would say it can be a spiral sometimes. It can be sort of, you're playing against the poor side, so you play well, and then that breeds confidence, so your performance gets even better, and then they're not offering anything back, so you start playing even better, and then it spirals and spirals and spirals. And I think that will be an interesting thing on Newport's end of things, because they'll be playing a team that hopefully, I mean, this is obviously all assuming we turn up, and I think we will, that will not let them get into that spiral that can sort of cause you to play well. So it will be interesting to see if we can sort of get onto Newport early, whether we can sort of just stamp our authority onto the game, and then that prevents Newport from playing well. And I think that's probably something that we need to do, is we need to just try and stamp our authority onto the game as quickly as we can. I think that's something we were talking about against York, was trying to get an early start. And despite the fact we went 1-0 up, we really didn't, obviously. I mean, 13% possession after 20 minutes, that's pretty obvious. And I think that's something we have to do on Saturday, because we don't want to give Newport that sniff. Obviously, they might not turn up at all on Saturday. We don't know how football is going to work. It's very much on the day sort of thing. But you don't want to give Newport that sniff, and then that can become a spiral, and I think that could be worst case scenario for us. So I think that's what we need to do, is we need to just try and be on it from the off. I know we said it against York and it didn't work out, but I think it has to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's against York, as much as they went in at halftime 1-0 down, they would have been going in at halftime knowing that they could hurt us, because they've shown that they could get into the areas. They've shown that they could settle on the ball. They did all these things early on. The confidence was there, regardless of the fact we were winning the game. They'd proven everything they needed to prove to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to stop. Newport can't be going into that game at halftime thinking, regardless of what the score is, they can't be going in at halftime thinking, yeah, we can get at these. We've shown that we can get at these.
Yeah.
They need to be going in at halftime thinking that they've got nothing to work with, that they've got nothing to play off the back of, because we've just nullified them. And that is what kind of, I don't really know if at any point under Steve Evans we've necessarily done that well. Like I said, our big advantage has been the way that we've kind of responded to that on the other end.
Yeah.
We've not really been particularly great at shutting teams off from the get-go. And that is really what we need to get into our game, because that is what the best teams at any level can do.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, and very true what you said, is we relied quite heavily in the second half of last season on being a second half team, especially in some games where sometimes we had really poor first halves, and we were still able to find a way and get that performance in the second half and turn the games around. And I think that was because we had confidence and we knew we could do it, and then the confidence breeds confidence, it becomes a spiral and all this. But it's a new season, so while we've still got some of that momentum and some of that confidence, you could argue we don't now because of how we've started the season. we do have to come out and start games better and start them early because, like you said, teams now won't necessarily fear playing us in the second half. They'll still have it in the back of their mind, but they'll know it's a different season, a different team, not a completely different team, but there are still changes that have taken place. So they don't necessarily have that fear of, oh, they're a second half team. So like they can't go in at half time now, constantly nervous that we'll come out and produce something in the second half, because second half of last season, we would, but now it's not necessarily known whether we can. So I think that point you made about Newport, having something to work with in the second half, that's especially true now because I mean, we saw it against York that we were the opposite. Obviously we lost the game, so we weren't an either team. But if we were one, we were a first half team against York. So Newport, going off the sample size, which is only a sample size of one, but it's still a sample size, they might not be so worried now about us coming out in the second half and just turning on the gas, stamping our authority onto the game. So they will want to probably, if it's 0-0 or even, God forbid, it's 1-0 to Newport, that will give them all the confidence in the world to go out and just keep doing what they're doing in the second half. And then who knows what can happen from there. So I think it is a very important thing for us going forward that we try and become more of a first half team. I'm not denying if we can keep closing out games like we have done over the last 6 months or so, then fantastic. But I think we need to become a bit more of an all-round package. I'm not going to say rode our luck, but we rode the confidence wave, I would say, in the second half of last season in second halves, and that allowed us to be a second half team. But it's a new season, and I don't think we can rely solely on that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you said it best there when you said it's only one game, but it's a 1-game streak. You're always going to feed off the back of what you've got, regardless of what that is. If we're in game 35 of the season, there's obviously so much more you can play into it. But because we've only got one game played, that doesn't mean that we're going to be going back necessarily to look at what happened last season. If you've only got one game played, you come into that game off the back of that one game. They will be coming in, regardless of everything that happened last year, regardless of how close to going down they're going to be coming into this game with one game in mind, that being their 3-0 win. We're going to be coming into this game with one game in mind, that being a 3-2 loss where we got dominated for most of it. And it's all a case of now, how do we react, as we've said so many times. But we can't just expect that it's going to go well because of how we were last season. It's a new season, it's a new team. We've made a lot of signings. It's pretty new look as much as we have retained a lot. And we need to show that this new squad is capable of what the squad last season was capable of, which is effectively putting teams away.
Absolutely. And I think that will be a key thing that we need to get right early on, is just instill that fear back into sides when they come up against us, because obviously you can base it all off of last season. Like there probably will be a bit of a hangover, particularly in the fan bases of sides that will be thinking, oh, Bristol Rovers, they were fantastic second half of last season. They've kept a lot of their core squad. They could be a tough test. But if you give them enough of a sample size, they'll be like, well, they're not really pulling up many trees this season. We can take them. So we need to instill that fear early on. And that, for me, comes through, playing well consistently over 90-minute spells. And I think if we can come out and start well against Newport, then hopefully, I think we've still got by far a better quality squad. It just depends on how well drilled Newports are, which if Saturday's anything to go by, then relatively. But I think at the end of the day, if it gets to the point where the teams play at their best, we can get on top of them. And then football does funny things to a man when you're 1 or 2-0 down, and just the tactical structure can all just break down. They can be as well drilled as they want, but then if the players are sort of on Mars, after being 1 or 2-0 down, tactical structure can just fall apart, and then we can pick them off.
Yeah, and we've not seen how their squad will respond to adversity. They've got a new manager. They've got a incredibly different squad. They lost pretty much their entire squad that they had last season. It's completely new look, and it's worked really well for one game. But as much as that is what we've got to feed off the back of, it is only one game. There's so many different in-game situations that they've not had to face yet that we don't know how they will respond to. And it comes down to us to force them into those uncomfortable situations, which we have got the quality to do. It's just whether we show it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point about they haven't really faced adversity yet. Obviously, they won 3-0 against Rochdale. I think Rochdale went down to 10 men, if I'm not wrong. So they were playing 11 against 10 for a good portion of the game. They had everything go their way on Saturday, which allowed them to. I mean, this is not me discounting their performance, but it allowed them to play to the best of their ability. They were able to play freely without you sort of the pressure. But then if we can get onto them early and, force them into an uncomfortable situation, we don't know yet how the 26-27 version of Newport will respond to that. Hopefully for us, it'll be the exact same way they've responded to adversity last season, where they'll just crumble, fall apart, and things become easy, but you never know. So, and the only way you're going to find out is to push them into that situation, and that's why we need to be on it and play well.
Yeah, we can't lay things on the plate for them like Rochdale did. And yeah, they did go down to 10 men. I don't know if you can guess who it was who got sent off for them.
Wasn't Belongo, was it?
Yes, it was.
Was it actually? Oh my God.
Yes, it was.
Oh
But yeah,
dear.
they've, as much as they played well, like we said, you've got to play well to take advantage of a situation, regardless of how poor the other team is. But they did have things kind of laid into their hands for them to fly with against Rochdale. So it's on us to not let the same thing happen, which I think is kind
Yeah.
of the general idea we both have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the key for us, is to not sort of let Newport, grow into the game and get that spiral started. That's what I was saying earlier. If they get that spiral of doom in our perspective started, that could be it. And that's why we need to start off well. And I think um, we've got the quality to do that. That's why I'm still relatively confident we should get the job done. Is I think we've got the quality, you know, 11 versus 11. When you take out and I know the tactics can be important, but I think just the quality we've got should be enough if we turn up. That's why I'm still confident we should get a result.
Yeah, so am I. I think I'm definitely leaning more towards the side of confidence. It's gonna take a lot more than one game to kind of take that away from me. 2 games will probably be enough. If we do lose this, I'm probably going to be going into our third game with a lot more worry. But
Yeah.
for now, yeah, I'm confident.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think you can only really no, so you can't look into one game too much. Obviously, there's things we need to improve. I think, like we've said, Smallwood can't really start right centre mid this week. He just looked off it there. I think we need to try and stop this, getting run through in the midfield. It's causing us problems too much. Obviously, we can sort of allow it a little bit against Peterborough because they're a League One side, the better quality. You can make the argument that they've just got the quality to do that. But York, that wasn't good enough. And I think we need to just sharpen up in defence a little bit. The fullbacks need to step up their game. Do you think we could potentially see Purrington start this week? Because Sparks wasn't on it. Do you think that might be a case to see Purrington start?
Yeah, no, I think both of the fullbacks could potentially be swapped out. Obviously, Tom James is an option as well. He wasn't in the
Yeah.
squad. Like, neither of them were in the squad for the York game, but they're both available. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't at least be in contention for it. Yeah, I think also if we are expecting a bit more of a stubborn game from Newport to offer us more, that we will go a bit more safe. I think almost we may have had the idea in mind in that York game that because of everything going on around them, they were going to offer us less. So we went very offensive with kind of our setup, which I don't think we're going to do against Newport, where maybe we would have had they not turned up in their first game, we would have assumed that it was going to be even more like that, and we would have gotten even more offensive, even more at them. Based on what we've seen, again, it is only a 1-game sample size, but it's what we've got to work with. They're a side that can cause us problems, so we need to prepare for that, and I think we
Yeah.
will. And that starts with the fullbacks.
Yeah. That's very true. And I think centre back wise, I don't expect us to make many changes. All right, I'm saying this is sort of they need to step it up though. Especially Harbottle didn't look great at all against York, so I think that's another area we need to really see improvement. Is they just need to um, just defend better. I mean, it sounds obviously we conceded 3 goals, but it you know a good game of football often starts from a solid defense because then you're not being put under the cosh, and then you can transition into that attack more often. You can create more chances, and it often leads to good things. So I mean, it sounds like the most obvious thing of all time. Defense play bad. Defense need to do better. But it's incredible how much just simple things like that can have an impact on your performance.
Yeah, I think both of them, particularly Harbottle, need to know that their spot isn't secured. I think that might be a bit of an issue. Is the fact that really throughout the whole of pre-season, we've known that they're going to be the two that are starting,
Yeah.
and I think they need to realise that we have got two other centre backs on the bench that are very, very capable,
Oh yeah.
and they've got to perform. Particularly, like I said, Harbottle. Because I thought Barmer was all right against York.
Yeah.
I don't think he was anywhere as much of an issue, whereas Harbottle against both Peterborough and York, I think, has been pretty sloppy. So he needs to kind of just give himself that kick that there are going to be people breathing down his neck, and he's got to step it up.
Yeah. No, I think you made a good point that they need to realise. I'm not going to say completely that they're sort of sleepwalking because they know that their spot is secure. But like you said, we've got. Was Kelly even on the bench on Saturday? I can't quite remember.
I can't remember either. I know Kilgore was, but Kelly, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
we had Kilgore on the bench. Kelly might not even have been on the bench, and that's a centre back partnership that we could, put in on Saturday, and we would probably, in terms of the raw quality, obviously it depends on the performance, but we probably wouldn't have lost anything. And I think that's something that they need to realise is that in terms of depth, we are a lot better this season than we were last season, and there's a few players that last season probably did have a secure spot because we just didn't have the numbers to replace them. But now we've got a solid couple of options in pretty much every position. So if players aren't on form, they will get replaced. And I think that's something they need to bear in mind. And hopefully that can be that, like you said, that kick that they need to improve their performance because I think we do need it at the back, especially. Up front, I don't think we need much change, but at the back, there needs to be some improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I've not really got anything to add to that. I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, we'll go into the predictions now then. And I do think it is going to be a pretty good game. I think it will be a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be a week ago. But I think we've got the quality. I think we'll have a kick up the backside from York. The players will want to put it right. And I think if we can get at Newport. I've gone in the time machine. If we can get at Newport, start well, like you were saying, push them into an area of adversity they don't want to be in. I think that could be a spiral, and we've seen in the last couple of years that Newport can't react well to adversity. So if they are the same in that regard, then I think that will do us well if we can get at them early. And I think if we can, then we definitely should win this game. I think even if it's sort of a tight game until 60, 70 minutes, we've got the quality to win it. But I think that would be our best chances to get that early, push them into that unknown, and hopefully that sees them collapse. I think it will be a tight game, and I'm going to go for Rovers 2, Newport 1. I think Newport might score, but I think we've just about got the quality to get it done. I really hope I'm right because I think we need to get some results in early to get going, pushing in the direction we want to be in. But I think we've got the quality to do it, and I think it will be a lot tougher than we were expecting, but we'll get it done 2-1.
Yeah, I have the same score in mind. I've just kind of got this idea in my head that this is going to be the kind of game where we're 2-0 up and we're cruising, and then they pull one back, and it's that nervy end that everyone hates. But I feel like where kind of our defensive issues were so strong, I think we need a statement performance. And I think that could almost give it to us if
Yeah.
we're under the cosh for, say, the last 15 to 20 minutes and we manage to pull through. I think that's the kind of thing that I could see working out well for kind of the season pushing forward. So I'm also going to go 2-1, and I'm predicting a nervy one, but we'll get it done.
Fair enough. So we've got the same results, just slightly different ways we think the game's going to pan out, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's our Newport preview then. Hopefully, better performance. The lads can get the job done and get that first win on the board. But that's going to be it for episode 10 of Rovers Rambles, the second episode of season 2, I suppose you could say now. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Thank you again, Jaimie, as ever, for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. See you then.
And thank you once again for listening. We'll see you next week.